Hi guys. So, if you've read any of the articles that we're putting out weekly on what just happened, you'll know that one of the things that's been a little bit of a common subject throughout the coronavirus crisis has been misuse of public funds and some real evidence of cronyism. There's no other word for it within the Conservative Party and how these are being spent. So, we've talked quite a lot about Dido Harding. She was the chief executive of TalkTalk at the time that they got the biggest fine that was ever awarded for loss of customers' data. And she walked into the job of being responsible for the NHS test, track and trace system, and now the body which is going to replace Public Health England. Now, there's going to be a full article that I'm going to write at some point about this when I get around to it, but I thought I'd give you a little bit of an idea of some of the things that we're looking at and the level of spending which is going to some really questionable sources. Now, obviously, tendering is an incredibly complex process. For those of you who haven't been through it, especially in the public sector, it can take months and months and months, and there's layers on layers on layers of due diligence that you need to do to make sure that public money is being spent right. Now, so of course, it's totally excusable that in a pandemic you would skip some of those processes because we need stuff to be delivered now. And as a result, yeah, you're probably going to end up spending a little bit more money, but you grease the wheels, essentially. However, some of it seems to have gone entirely out of control. And obviously this has been evidenced no better than the test, track and trace system, of which we've spent about £12 billion on so far. And let's just compare that to the Irish system, which for their for their track and trace system rather cost them €700,000. They also had it working months and months before ours does. I mean, ours still doesn't work, and we were using Excel spreadsheets which lost rows on rows of data. Anyway, let's not go there. So 12 billion was spent on that Dido Harding has overseen. She's giving away public contracts to companies like Serco. 12 billion, as I said, and guess who Dido Harding's husband is? It's MP John Penrose, who is also the Prime Minister's anti-corruption champion. So that's all a little bit laughable. So we started to look a little bit further into this, and another great case was Lord Dayton, who is a Conservative peer, and he was awarded in April, backdated to April. It was awarded in April, and he carried on from April, but it only just it was 25th of August is when the contract was signed. He was awarded £300,000 to be the PPE czar for 6 months. And actually, when you look into what this involved, it was basically looking for some companies to supply us PPE and providing secretarial duties. It's sort of bizarre that could have been 300,000. Again, it was awarded without tender or competition. It gets more interesting though. So there is a company called PPE MedPro, which was set up by Anthony Page. And we're going back into April now when this company was set up. Now, Anthony Page was secretary of the company that deals with the Conservative Baroness Monet, M-O-N-E. It deals with her brand. So he was the secretary of the company that dealt with Baroness Mone's brand. And he quit, and the same day he became a director of PPE MedPro. 44 days later, PPE MedPro, which had no experience of supplying anything, let alone PPE, won a contract for £122 million supplying PPE to the NHS. Pretty strange. Another one is a really, really interesting one called Crisp Websites Limited. Crisp Websites Limited, which ironically doesn't have a website, has a trading name called PestFix and another one called BirdX. Now, it's been trading for a few years, and it's owned by a family called the Englands, who there seems to be no real record of anywhere online. I'm sure they're there somewhere, but I can't actually see them. Now, that company at the beginning of this year had £18,000 in assets. So it's tiny, it's a micro company. They were awarded, in the first 6 months of this year, contracts for £345 million in supply of PPE. These contracts were awarded without tender, without any process. I mean, the only way that you can award contracts without tender are certain things, like you have to be able to say that that's the only supplier that could meet that capacity. Well, how can a supplier that only had £18,000 worth of assets supply £345 million worth of PPE? It's not even done. There are 5 more contracts which haven't been fully detailed on the website yet, that haven't been published on the government contracts website. All of these have been awarded without contract. So anyway, that's where your hard-spent tax money is currently being spent by the Conservatives. And as I say, obviously, you do have to put this into context that we're dealing with a pandemic and you have to skip some elements of process. But there is more and more evidence being produced that there were just millions and millions of pounds worth, hundreds of millions of pounds worth, billions of pounds worth of contracts handed out to people's friends who had absolutely no experience in supplying these. There's another one which we'll detail in the article to come out that's part owned by Liz Truss, that appeared, a company that appeared, Liz Truss, an MP by the way, that appeared in April, that's supplied a huge amount of PPE. Anyway, really interesting, so look out for that article. Follow us on Twitter at WJH blog, on Facebook the same, and on Instagram, maybe not on Instagram now watching this, at What Just Happened News, no, at What Just Happened blog, and thanks for listening.